Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with part 17, the Dervish Fraternity, from the Adepts in the Eastern Esoteric Tradition, by Manly Palmer Hall, Part 4, The Mystics of Islam, the Dervish Fraternity. In Western Asia, there are a number of mystical sects which have evolved from and within the faith of Islam. Among these, the Dervish Orders are the best known and the most likely to be contacted by travelers and tourists. Within the Dervish Fraternity, there are 12 principal orders, each governed by a chief to whom is given complete allegiance. The members are initiated by rites which appear to the uninformed to be barbaric and fantastic. The spiritual fraternities of the Dervishes are highly respected throughout the Moslem world. The attitude toward them is not so different from the esteem in which wandering bands of friars were held in Christendom of the Middle Ages. The Dervishes are regarded as persons possessing supernatural faculties and are consulted in matters requiring extraordinary discernment. Two general types of holy men are to be found in the mystical fraternities of Islam. The first is the scholarly and consecrated dervish, whose life is devoted to the study of the secret spiritual forces of the universe. The second is the religious mendicant, who, for one reason or another, has renounced worldliness and lives by the generosity of the faithful. It is believed, however, that exalted souls may conceal their identities under most pitiful appearances. Therefore, it is unwise to neglect the requirements of even the most lowly of the religious mendicants. The orders of dervishes can be distinguished by the color and form of their garments and the number of folds in their turbans. The peculiar powers of the dervishes have been attested by many Europeans, and the fakirs are famous for their skill in conjuration. Some of the dervish sects are in more or less close association with Eastern Freemasonry and the Druses of Syria. The esoteric rites and practices of many Near Eastern sects belong to a common stream of tradition, a fact that is recognized by the better informed members, even though the less enlightened cling to fanatical attitudes of isolation. The outer or visible body of dervishes consists of organizations or groups of disciples who study the mysteries of life from ancient and venerable teachers. Behind the visible structure of dervish mysticism, however, is a secret, invisible institution composed of illumined masters who only upon rare occasions contact disciples of the lower grades. This inner body of God-instructed men possesses the fullness of divine knowledge, and membership comes as the reward for outstanding achievement in the lower grades of the Brotherhood. L.M.J. Garnett writes of the dervishes thus: "According to the mystical canon, there are always on earth a certain number of holy men who are admitted to intimate communion with the deity." J.P. Brown refers to these spiritual ones as the master souls. They are still in the physical body and wander about the earth, but are recognizable only by the elect. The dervishes teach that any person whom they meet, even the poorest beggar, may be one of these master souls. At the head of the hierarchy composing the inner or mystical dervish order is a most august soul who is called the axis or pole of the universe. His identity is unknown even to the highest members of the order, and he often wanders the earth in the garb of a novice. He is a master of the power of magic, can make himself invisible at will, and traverse vast distances with the speed of thought. On either side of the axis are two great souls subordinate only to him. When the time comes for the axis to leave his physical body and ascend into the sphere of light, then the faithful one on his right is advanced to the dignity of axis, and all the other members of the order correspondingly advance one degree to fill the vacancies created. This great body of spiritual mystics, collectively the lords of souls and directors, is an invisible government controlling all temporal institutions of Islam and far surpassing in power all earthly monarchies. There is a considerable discussion of the hierarchy of divine friends, walis, in the Fawaid-i Rukni of Shaykh Sharfuddin Maneri. Dervishes performing their cosmic dance from Picard's religious ceremonials. With an outer organization of many thousands of dervishes of varying degrees of holiness, and an inner body composed of God-men so highly advanced and so superior to ordinary humanity that they seem more mystical than real, it is evident that the dervishes form a very powerful order in the Islamic world. Each dervish, it is said, is founded in the faith through having passed successfully 1,001 days and nights of temptation. Renouncing everything pertaining to the flesh, these men have devoted their lives to the perfection of consciousness. One of the most interesting sects of the Dervishes is the Order of Mevlevi, more commonly known as the dancing or whirling Dervishes, and popularly supposed to have been founded by the great Persian Sufi poet and philosopher Jalal-ud-Din Rumi, 1207 to 1273. The astonishing ability of the whirling dervish to spin with incredible velocity and then to stop suddenly to lean over and pick up a pin is amazing. He can continue this dancing motion for a considerable time, and no amount of spinning causes dizziness. From what can be gleaned in the fragmentary extracts from the doctrines which have come into the hands of the profane, the purpose of the whirling is to attune the rhythm of the body to the circular motion of the celestial spheres. Like many religious orders in various parts of the world, the dervishes have strange practices intended to produce the ecstatic condition. In some cases, they even resort to the use of hashish to bring about a temporary clairvoyance, but this practice can hardly be considered representative of the true ideals of dervishism. The Mevlevis wear tall but not pointed caps, and their garments are tight about the waist, but flare out below like an extremely full skirt to the ankle. During the whirling dances, these skirts stand straight from the body in a large circle, making the dervish resemble a spinning top. The various groups of dervishes wear different styles of caps, all of which are more or less significant. One type of headgear is vase-shaped and symbolizes the urn of spiritual light in which God kept the soul of Muhammad before the birth of the Prophet. There is another interesting point brought out, at least theoretically, in Dervish philosophy. Obeying the ancient custom of the Brotherhood, the various members of the order always travel in certain directions of the compass and at certain angles. Consequently, if one desires to meet a certain dervish saint, it is first necessary to learn the angle upon which he travels. If the seeker will then place himself at some point along the line of this angle and await the dervish, the latter will ultimately appear. The dervishes possess a secret doctrine concerning human regeneration which has many points of similarity with the mysticism of the Brahmins. Dervish philosophy may be summarized as the Oriental doctrine of realization. By renouncing human consciousness and rising above all limitations of the sense perceptions and the intellect, the dervish attains to a level of transcendent understanding in which he feels himself absorbed into the nature of the universal being. The dervish neophyte advances along paths. These paths or degrees are 4 in number, and each is governed by a personification of a divine attribute. In the first degree, the novice seeks absorption in the sheikh or master of the path. In the second degree, the disciple aspires to identification with the illustrious sage who founded the discipline or path. In the third degree, the initiate attempts to accomplish absorption into the Prophet Muhammad. And in the fourth degree, the adept seeks complete universalization in deity. John P. Brown, whose text The Dervishes is still one of the principal reference works on the subject, derives the word dervish from 2 Persian syllables, the first meaning adore and the second to beg. It is questionable, however, if the term actually means to beg from door to door. More likely it signifies those who ask alms at the door of truth. Originally, the Islamic mystics were small groups of disciples who accepted without question the spiritual leadership of some enlightened saint or distinguished teacher. Mystics have never been conformists and have always depended upon direct extrasensory experience for inspiration and guidance. Like the philosophical schools which flourished in the Golden Age of Greece, depending largely upon the size and accomplishments of the leader. A few outstanding teachers, like Pythagoras and Plato, left behind them such strongly integrated associations that these survived and became enduring organizations. Leadership passed to elder disciples who, in turn, selected their successors, thus establishing a lasting pattern of descent. This is in essence the story of the Dervish Orders. And because their mysticism was associated with the traditions, rites, and ceremonies of the Moslems, they belong with this religion. Actually, however, their mysticism transcends all sectarian limitation, and their illuminations confer upon them a universal citizenship. Although the Dervishes are regarded as the principal monastic order of the Islamic world, they differ from Christian monastic groups in one particular: they give no allegiance to the Orthodox faith and receive no benefits therefrom. They survive entirely by their own efforts and enjoy the privilege of administering their affairs as they see fit. The dervishes receive considerable public support, and it is considered injudicious to deny them any reasonable request. Although critics insist that these orders survive upon the gullibility of the ignorant, this is not strictly true. We may as well say that all religions depend for their existence upon the generosity of the faithful. The dervish influence is so widespread that in some areas, every Muslim is associated with one of the several orders. There are instances in which tradesmen and merchants constitute dervish guilds. Many authors refer to the similarities between the dervishes and European Freemasons. For example, Brown notes that the dervishes of the Bektashi order consider themselves quite the same as the Freemasons and are disposed to fraternize with them. Probably the analogies are due to parallels of doctrine and ritual. As early European Freemasonry was strongly influenced by Near Eastern sects, and its roots were deep in the symbolism of old orders which flourished in Syria and Arabia. The vestiges of Oriental mysticism in Western Masonry, therefore, remain essentially a mystical philosophy and, as such, will have conflict with the prevailing tendency to ignore the esoteric content of rituals and symbols. A cope in the shape of a cross. A religious cape with large sections of the Quran on its panels, painted in pinkish red color and worn by some pious pilgrim on his journey to Mecca. On a few occasions, the dervishes have been involved in the political ambitions of Islamic leaders. Such pressures have affected adversely most religious groups, but should not be regarded as representative of the real convictions of monastic orders. After all, the Dervish orders have become so diffused throughout the life of the Islamic people that the conduct of individual members or even groups does not indicate the temper of the more enlightened mystic. Fanaticism is present in all religious communities and has brought discredit upon many worthy and commendable organizations. By his own creed and doctrine, the dervish is a man of peace, dedicated to charitable works and the attainment of internal tranquility. All to the contrary results from abuse or misunderstanding of principles. Wherever men feel that they have received divine insight, the prophetic spirit produces various forms of divination. Some dervishes have become famous for reading human destiny in sand by the stars or by gazing upon magical objects. There is wide belief in omens and portents, and while some of these soothsayers are of doubtful ability, the majority are obviously sincere, if not entirely proficient. Certain dervishes have made remarkable prophecies which have been fully justified by subsequent facts. The Dervish orders are especially interesting because they form an impressive unit within the world concept of mysticism. They supply further evidence of the existence of an esoteric tradition concerning the possibility of the human being advancing his internal life by meditative disciplines. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.